It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Jeanine Brunstein. We're here in your beautiful home in Montevideo in Uruguay. And Jeanine, you were born in Brussels.
Yes, in Brussels, Belgium, in December 1940. Belgium was already occupied by Nazis. And my father was estaba escondido.
Was hidden.
And he saw me when I was 10 days old because he couldn't come. The Nazis already
They had occupied.
Went to look for them.
And your family, were there many generations in Belgium?
No. My father was born in Strogenets, settled in 1905, and it was Romania in that time. It was Austria-Hungary. Empire. And when he was, there were 10 children, and when he was 8 years old, they went to Germany, to Hamburg, because it was la miseria.
It was there was a lot of poverty there.
And then in Hamburg, they were not rich but well, and he was studying lawyer, and with his father and his brothers, they had a peleteria.
Leather shop.
No,
Belts. Out of leather.
Peleteria is cuero, yeah, leather.
And then leather from animals. And in 1935, he couldn't go anymore at the university, and he couldn't have anymore the shop. And he was writing in a journal against the Nazis. So he went as a refugee, as a political refugee, to Belgium. Why to Belgium, I don't know. But one part of the family went to Belgium. My mother was born in Lodz, in Poland, in 1925. And when she was 3 years old, her mother died, and she had a sister older than her, and father, he stayed there, and her grandmother was going to Belgium because she had one daughter there, and huyendo. Fleeing from the pogroms, and they went to Belgium, and when she was 16 years old, her grandmother died, and she was living with aunts, and then she knew my father, and they married. She was 16 years old, and my father was 32. And they had un negocio de piel.
Business, a leather business.
Yes, and when in 1939 they went, because the Nazis, there was the Nazis were coming, and they went to France, and in France the French police took my father to a camp of refugees, because as he was writing with his sisters in German, la portera, the porter from the hotel where they were living, said that he was a German, un espía, a spy, a German spy. So they sent him there to Bretagne. Then he could se escapó.
He escaped.
He escaped before the German entered, and there were 3 who escaped. And then he came back to Belgium, because the Nazis were already there. So in France or in Belgium it was the same thing. In, as I told you, in 1940, I was born, and my father already left his shop. And when he came and he knew me, and when they could get out with me, they get out with con el cochecito,
with the little pram.
As if they were going to spazieren,
For a walk.
For a walk, and they let everything. Fortunately, my father had gold, and he could take, but they couldn't take anything. They were like if they were going for a walk. And then they were they wanted to go to Vichy, because it was the part of France libre, free, but it was not free because Pétain had already gave France. And they went walking with my uncle and his wife and my grandfather. They were walking from one city to the other, and when they were coming in one city, the police came and they told them, you have to leave in 24 hours. So they went from town to town and escaping. Once they were in a carboneria, where they carbon
in carbon, where they sold carbon.
And they stayed there until they took them out, and then where they could stay, because they didn't have papers. They were apatrides, you know,
Yeah.
without
Stateless.
Stateless, yeah.
Stateless. Me too, because I was born in Belgium, but as my father was in Belgium, I am not Belgian.
Were you born in a hospital?
Yes, Yes, because my mother, when she had to when I was going to born, the police, she was walking, and the police told her, how you are here, you can't stay, porque había toque de queda.
There was a curfew.
And she said, I am going to have a baby. So the police took her to the hospital. And then, they came back at home. And then in France, the police always took them. And it was very difficult to have food, because they go to the campesinos
To the peasants in the
for buying some food, but it was very difficult. And once they were escondidos,
hidden.
in the carbon, and once in a hospital, and then in the hospital, after a few days, they told that they had to go out, and they asked very much money for the days they were there. And when they told her so much money, they said, well, and be glad that we didn't report you. And there were two líneas de demarcación.
There were two demarcation lines.
And they during when they saw that there was a change of police, they went running or dressed like campesinos.
Like peasants.
And so they came. Once I was very ill. I had a stomach illness, a dysentery. But they couldn't call a doctor, because you never knew if the doctor will
inform.
Yes, or not. So, I am here. But that left me some marcas,
left us some marks.
Left me, but with medicine I can get out. And then my father had a deputy, a Belgian deputy. He was a friend of him, and he could have permission to stay in one place in France. So there we stayed for 1 year and a half there.
You know the name?
In La Tour d'Aigle, in the south of France, but not in Cannes. It was in the other side. La Tour d'Aigle and Cassis. My parents and me, we were escondidos, hidden in los viñedos.
In the vineyards.
My uncle played very good piano, so they were in La Tour d'Aigle. It was near Cassis, and there they gave him. He was playing piano in the night in some cafe, and they bring him eggs or chicken or something like that. Well, so the time was going, and my parents, my father and my uncle, they were brothers. They could have, they could get the visa. They had one sister here in Uruguay who came before 1938, and they could get them visa to come to Uruguay. Uruguay was practically the only country that gave visas, let Jews enter.
Bolivia as well.
Bolivia too. And
And there was a place, Shanghai, in Shanghai by
Yes.
China, but
Yes.
those were the only places.
yes, but they asked in the States, no, in Canada, no, and well, they found here, and my aunt went to the ministry here, and well, you had to pay, I think it was $500 per person to enter, but after that they give them back the money.
Like a
Because
deposit.
They didn't want you to decaer in
To be like a burden.
a
To be a
cargo.
burden.
A cargo.
Yeah, to be a burden.
Yes. So, but you had to go out from France, and the French didn't let you Jews to get out. So my mother wrote a book. She was 85 years old, and she wrote a book. They couldn't. They knew a few years early now, because they always wondered why France didn't let the Jews go out, because they didn't want them, because they had the orders from the Nazis to kill them in France, all the Jews. So the only way was crossing
The Alps.
the Pyrenees
The Pyrenees, sorry. Yeah.
in the night. So they took a contrabandista.
A smuggler.
They took one because, well, you had to pay always. And they took one to cross them, because the Pyrenees is very muy tupido,
It's full, it's,
very
yeah, it's
full of
mountains.
yes,
Yeah.
mountains
It's
and
dense,
árboles.
dense
And you
with
didn't
trees.
see of trees, and you didn't even see the light. So they crossed. They begin to cross, and the man who had to bring them, he said that he couldn't bring them because he began, and then he said he had to go to return, because the police would search for him. So he said, you walk half an hour and you go to a big road, and then you take left, and then you go to Spain. They walked 4 hours. And they didn't know if they were in France or in Spain, or if si les tendió una
Or whether he gave them a lie that, you
Yes.
know,
Deceived them. They
deceived
didn't know,
them,
yeah.
that's right.
And well, when they went to the road, they began to dance, but they didn't. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, and they said they didn't be sure if they were in France
Or in
or in Spain.
And were they carrying you?
Yes,
Because
They
you
were
were, you, were,
carrying
you were
me.
still very,
Yes.
you were, what year was this that you went? In what year did this happen?
what year? 43. End of 42, say 43. When they get in Spain, the police was very nice with them. And a few days later, they went to Vigo, and then Vigo. And then they took the ship. It was the last ship that came to South America.
Because there were U-boats. It was very dangerous. That
Yes, because there were, ¿cómo se dice? En el agua cuando hay,
submarines with U-boats and
Submarinos.
sí, y también minas,
Oh, it was mined.
yeah, mine.
because the German didn't want the ship to go to Europe because they brought from Uruguay and from these countries, they brought food,
Provisions.
and they didn't want. And there was one ship, un submarino, the Graf Spee, I don't know.
The Graf a big story here.
Yes, and the Graf Spee was fundido.
It was sunk just off the coast here in Montevideo.
Well, but during the time that they came, well, it was dangerous because there were las minas,
The mines.
the mines. And my mother said that for her it was the liberation to come to go out from Europe. But she said there were people who were crying in the ship, and she didn't understand because she wanted to go out of that infierno,
Hell.
hell. And when they came, I say always my mother, because my father never spoke from the war.
And did you ask him?
No. You know, 80, 70 years ago, the young, we didn't ask. We didn't speak, and then, no, I didn't ask. And my cousins, neither, they didn't speak also. Well, we came with my uncle and my aunt and my grandfather. The other part, my mother's father died in the ghetto of Lodz, and her sister, she never knew anything. She believed that they went to Russia because they had a little baby, but she didn't know.
And she could never find out.
No. And some years ago she tried, but she became ill in trying to found them, so she didn't want. And unas tía,
An aunt.
aunt of her had, and his husband, they had 2 children, 17, a boy 17, a girl 18, and they were taken and killed. And another aunt of my mother, her husband and one of her sons were killed because they were in the resistance, and they were killed in Belgium by the resistance. And one sister of my father also, they were in Germany. She and her husband were taken to the camp, and another un sobrino, a nephew of my father also was taken to the camp.
And they never survived.
They did survive. And well, we came here, and well, first we went to una pension.
To a pension,
A pension
boarding
where
place.
all the Jews who came were there. Or there were some places. And then my father opened another shop, and we began to live normally. But they never spoke. When I was young, they never spoke of the war.
And your mother, did she speak a little bit?
After.
Not.
But for many years, nobody spoke. The first who began to speak was Rita. You know Rita?
We're going to go and see her
Ah, you are
afterwards.
going there.
Yes.
She began to speak, and she began to speak in the schools, and there was a Holocaust museum, but many years after. Well, my parents put me in the French school, the lycée français, because we spoke French. There were few Jews there. We were maybe the whole school, we were 5 or 6. There was not anti-Semitism declared, but you were the Jew. And I was a patriot. Homeless, no, ¿cómo se dice?
Homeless, yeah.
I didn't have nationality, so
Stateless.
Yeah.
so because my parents also they didn't have, and when there were French fests, or I know you're not French, you can't make part of that. And when there were Uruguayan, you are not Uruguayan. So and nobody speaks about that. Before nobody explains you why, and so, well, who am I? I had an identity crisis without knowing really what was wrong, but it was. And when my parents were 3 years in Uruguay, they got the Uruguayan nationality, and I had to wait 18 years old to be Uruguayan.
They wouldn't give it to you as well?
No, because I wasn't born here and I was young. So when we traveled, because we went to Belgium after the war, or to Argentina, my father had a sister there. I had to go to the embassy to ask for a pass to go. Well, it was all. And in my home, they were very, when you go out from a war, they didn't speak about the war, but era muy melancólico.
It was quite sad, melancholic.
Yes, it was not
Joyful.
joyful, no. Well, I didn't know. When I was 7 years old, we went to Belgium to see. My father wanted to see his family. He had some sisters there and another brother. And
They had survived the war. The brother and the sisters had survived the war.
yes. One brother he had a shop of pelts, you say,
Leather.
and up of there he had an apartment, and he had a guy who was working in his shop. So he was heated in his apartment in un falso armario.
In a false wardrobe.
And for 4 years, he never went out.
Of the armario. Oh wow.
He went to the apartment, but when they hear a noise
In Brussels.
in Brussels, and the guy who was working with him was like if que ella se quedó con las pertenencias.
She sort of pretended that she had stayed with all their belongings and everything.
Of the Jew. So she lived there and she brought food, but you couldn't bring very much food because she was very thin and people looked because nobody had very
Pretty
much to eat.
suspicious.
And the other one was in a monastery, and the other, I don't know how she could stay. Then, and here we lived well, and we lived not in the ghetto as such, so where one part of the Jews were in another part, and one part were in the barrio Villa Muñoz, but we were in the Parque Rodó. And there were here the Sephardi too, but they were in the old city. And so I after that, when I was older, I married a French Jew, and who was in France during the war in the mountains, and they got false papers as Christians, and there, from my husband, I am divorced, and he was already dead, and the father was from Turkey, the mother was from Salonique, Greece.
Saloniki.
Yes, and they were living in France. My husband was born in France, so we all were from different countries, and my 3 children were born here. And it was difficult in the, I was 7, 8 years old. My parents during the summer, they alquilaban.
They rented.
They rented a house here at 50 kilometers from here, near the beach. And there were very many Jews, because there was a hotel kosher. And in Shabbat, all the people were out. And when we were in Belgium, we brought tocadiscos.
A record player.
It was in 1948. It was all, and in that, and many discs, I say?
Records.
Records. One of them was the Yiddish Mama. So they, look, it was 3 years after the war, and many of them lose the mothers. So all the Jews came at home to listen the Yiddish Mama, and all were crying, and I remember all were crying, and then there were other records, and there they were laughing. But every night was the Yiddish Mama, we began to cry. So in this atmosphere, not so joy, I grew up, And so my father never wanted to speak about the war. Never. And when we were to Belgium, I was hardly 8 years old. I saw in the one aunt of my mother, who they took the children, there was a little jardín, a garden, like this, and there was a hole. It was a bomb who was there, and in the eyes of a child, it was. I heard, but I didn't know exactly what was. And then we went to London. I don't know why we went to London. And there I saw what was, you had tickets, the rationing for get food.
Yes, rationing,
coupons. And I saw that they had coupons, and I remember after, and I saw London was destroyed, one big part I saw destroyed. Well, and now I read much of survivors, and we know what was during the war, but the thing it's very, very terrible for me is to see when the people who could survive, when one part dead because they eat too much, they were ill, and the other part, now where are we going? They didn't have family, they didn't have anything. And I read one book some days before, and he said that some people went to their house, but sometimes people wanted to kill them.
It happened, actually.
Because they didn't want them to get back the houses. And for me, this is terrible. And I can tell you that whatever, even now, it's terrible what is happening. But when I compare, I have always a Shoah. I have always a Shoah in the mind. And when I compare what is happening now, I can't, no me puedo emocionar frente a...
She finds it difficult to get very emotional about what's happening now, given the Shoah.
I compared with the Shoah. For me, it was... I want, some years before, I went to Germany. And, well, I never took very... No me emocionó.
She was not very emotional about it.
But some years ago, I went to Berlin. It was terrible for me. Because I saw the quarters where Jewish people lived, and they lived well. And you see, you were in Berlin.
I've been in Germany, but not in Berlin, but other parts
You
of Germany.
see in the street
The names and the
names.
stones.
It was terrible. I was so angry, so emotional, so and everything is, if there wasn't war, there wasn't communism, everything is well. And well, but the Shoah let me great imprentas.
Had a great effect on
A
her.
great
Yes.
impression.
Imprint.
Yes. And the most I am old, the worse it is.
The older she is.
It doesn't get easier. It gets
No.
more difficult.
More difficult. More. Because I read more and I think of what my mother, she was very, in Belgium they ate kosher and then during the war not. But my father never ate pork nor, and what was I going to say?
In Belgium they ate kosher.
Yes.
In the war not.
And well, here not, because but and it was always this atmosphere of no alegre.
Not a joyful atmosphere.
Did your parents keep any of the chagim? Did they go to synagogue? Did they have?
Yes, yes.
And they had Pesach and they had.
Yes, yes. Always, and now I do it. We always do Pesach and we go to the synagogue. And my children didn't, their companions and husband were not Jew. But one of my daughters now, her husband was se suicidó, made
committed suicide.
And she goes to the synagogue and she goes to every event. And one of her boys, she has two boys, one of them is now is Moreh of Rikudim. You know the dance, the Israeli dance. And 2 years ago, I sent, there is a Galit, I don't remember, when there were 12 days that they went to Israel, and I paid that. It was very not expensive. I paid them. 3 of them were, because the other wasn't 18 years old. He couldn't, but he maybe, well, now we don't know. And they came, that Israel was marvelous, but the Jewish, but they come to the synagogue, they come, yes, yes. And my boy writes sometimes for the Jewish, he works for the Jewish institutions, and
And Jeanine, do you give talks? You give talks at different
when
venues,
they call
different
me
schools?
to the children, to the young, 15 to 18 more or less, and I am very emocionada.
Emotional.
Emotional, because they are very, they atienden mucho.
They pay attention.
They
They're
pay very
interested.
much attention, and sometimes they are 20, 25, and they ask me crazy questions. Once they asked me, I was waiting. I was sure that someone will ask me that. After the Shoah, after all that, do you believe in God? You're not going to ask me. Yes? You want to ask me that?
It's a very difficult question because it's hard to judge people. It's very hard to.
It's difficult.
It's very difficult.
I asked one More that is always that is very in the Jewish community, or his life was there. And I asked him that, and he told me, it's very difficult to answer that, to responder.
To answer.
To
respond. And so I didn't get. And another so I told her what I really think. I think in what Spinoza said. I think in the nature. The nature was made nature, not a man who brings us to hell but no more of that. I don't think about that. And
I've done quite a few interviews, and I've asked the question, and people have said that it's very difficult to answer, but they believe, but they've got many questions, many questions
yes.
that they are unanswered. But a lot of people said if they didn't have their faith, they would have had nothing. And the faith is what kept them going. With a lot of people, because they had the faith,
yes.
it kept them going.
My mother says that she was, that's why I began to speak about the kosher. Because my mother said she believed very much in God. And she always, she was dead with 97 years.
Wow.
3 years ago. And she said she believed very, very much in God, because she said, well, once we had the chance of being saved from the Nazis, but so many times it's because God
It was a miracle.
was looking for us. So she has very, very faith.
Another way of answering is one has to look at how was it possible that the German culture, the German nation was the most cultured. They had the highest Nobel Prize winners, the doctors, it was the most cultured nation, and how could such a people have done what they did. It's very hard to comprehend that such an incredibly clever and cultured nation could have done what they did. So the question is, where was man? And where was the rest of the world where they didn't allow Jews to come in? Britain had the white paper, Australia, Canada, South Africa, all the countries didn't want to accept Jews.
No.
So a lot of countries, it's not only Germany, a lot of the countries that did not want to accept the Jews, they had nowhere to go.
And there's
a lot of questions on the whole world to ask.
Yes, and there was why they culpabilizaron.
Why they blamed.
They blamed the Jewish in North America, in the States, that they didn't do anything because there were many Jews,
Yeah.
and they didn't do anything to.
There are many
because
questions. Yeah.
They were afraid maybe to lose.
In Switzerland as well, there were cases where Jews wanted to come to Switzerland and they weren't so well accepted. It's not so simple.
But Switzerland was, in Switzerland there were the money of the Germans.
Yeah.
That's why they didn't attack Switzerland, and they didn't want the Jews.
But your mother always kept her faith. Your mother always was.
Yes, yes.
And your father?
Also, but my father spoke very, muy poco, little. My father spoke very little. You know, the Jewish, excuse me, how old are you?
65.
And your parents, they also maybe the fathers didn't speak very much.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
My grandmother spoke, yeah.
Yes, the mothers spoke. They didn't speak, they worked.
And
And they worked very hard.
I have to ask you, when did you realize that you were a survivor? Because growing up, when did you realize that, wow, I'm actually a
Not
survivor?
very much ago. I will tell you. The one who spoke, I was only, I don't have brothers or sisters. And the one who spoke always was my mother. And when they asked for someone to go to speak, it was my mother. I didn't exist for that. And Rita, where you are going, she told me always, but you are a survivor. Don't stay without speaking. So when my mother didn't go anymore because of the age, maybe 5 years ago, I began to go, and I realized that I am a survivor. And the other thing who let me, yes, when I had my first boy, I heard that the German cut the head of the babies, and they played football with that. And I was terrified with that. Yes, I had like a phobia.
A phobia.
Yes, tenía miedo
She was scared.
of that. And then what I can't see is the alambres de púa.
She can't see the wires, you know.
The barbed wire.
Ah.
The barbed wire.
This is for me, if I see somewhere. And when I dreamed, when I remembered the dreams, always until some years, maybe 10 years ago, it was always the same dreams. There was a very big hole with animals, prehistoric animals, all in the dark, and I was running around the hole. And I never think, but that was the war. I believe not. And I always saw those pictures. Then, after psychologues, and I could get out of that and see beautiful things in the world. But,
And Jeanine, if I can ask, what message do you give to the future generations?
but we can't say nevermore. We have to be always, we have to be together. Well, we know that there are Chabad and this, but
United.
united, and we can't forget that we are Jews, and we have to defend and we can't be before the war that we were small and we couldn't defend us. Now we have
A state.
a
Country. A state.
a state, and even when now it's war, but they are looking for us, defending us, and we are here very well. The poor, the children, but we are here. We are in liberty, and there they give their life.
Sure.
And we have to know that we have to help.
That's wonderful. I just want to thank you. David, you want to come in as well?
No one from
Well, Jeanine, I am so grateful to you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
There are no words to tell you how grateful I am. It's been such an honor to be in your home, really, and to hear your story. And it's just so emotional and so powerful, and it's so unbelievable. And there were miracles. There were amazing miracles that your parents managed to cross over the Pyrenees, not knowing where they were going. Many were informed on, and they were sent back.
Yes.
So you're a miracle, and you must continue going. And Leonie, I'm just so grateful to you as well for arranging this talk, meeting you here in Montevideo in Uruguay. It's been special, very special.
For me, it's very emotional that you came and you.
Well,
Yes.
I'm extremely grateful to you. And you should just be well and have mazel and brocha. May be string to 120 in good health, and thank you very, very much.
And I can see that.
Absolutely, I'm so grateful.
Voy a poder ver.
Will you be able to send it to her? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sí.
Jeanine, thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Encanto.
So this is the book from your mother.
My mother. Can I turn it?
Please. And in the book she's got a picture of Brussels.
Here, this is Brussels, this is Uruguay, and this is a ship.
And it's the title of the book is
Omi, because we always called her Omi, because Oma we didn't like. Omi cuenta.
Omi tells the story.
This is her testimony.
No, there are not.